Yes, hello. This is Tim Law with Plan It Forward Coaching and Self-Reliance You. I am very, very happy to be hosting a good friend of mine, Steve Navaroli, who has a variety of experience in, in sports, sports writing, and a whole group of directions. And I'll let Steve kind of introduce himself and kind of tell us his story there. So Steve, welcome, and so glad you're here.
Well, Tim, thanks for having me and the invitation. Glad to be certainly a part of it. I've admired what you've done for a long time, and we've certainly had many discussions along this line. So this is awesome. For myself, longtime sports journalist in the area. Now I do all freelance work. I work directly with some schools and some athletic programs. Still do some writing, but as you also well know, I host a weekly radio show, which is catered strictly to local sports. It's where my passion lies, if you will.
Yes, and I've had the honor of being on that radio show a couple times, and it's like as soon as you get done, you almost can't wait to get back on again. And I appreciate everything you've done as far as setting that up, and it certainly has a great format on how you work it there, Steve. So tell you what, can you kind of tell us your story there as far as, I know you had to overcome, as a lot of people do, certain challenges, through your life there or whatever, and how, some of those have impacted, where you go and what you're doing.
Well, Tim, the thing of it is, I would say I'm probably, obviously the fact that I'm here, I'm extremely blessed. But, I think even coming out of the biggest challenge, of course, would have been physically in 2012 being diagnosed with, stage 3 throat cancer. And it wasn't, it probably wasn't as bad as that sounded, if you will. My chances of survival upon diagnosis were very good right from the start. There was, however, what happens to your health while you're going through it and while you're getting, between all the I had 33 radiation treatments to my neck, which is a lot. 7 chemotherapies, which, it is what it is. But, the thing of it is, as I look back on the experience, going through that and the perspective gained from it, I was fortunate to have gotten cancer the way I did. And I don't think many people would ever dare to say something like that because it just sounds too crazy. But I honestly look at it that way because of not that I didn't feel I was a good person before and did things the right way. I'd like to think I did, but just that whole experience really kind of crystallized how I viewed life, if you will.
Sure. Well, and one of the things that I talked with one of the other earlier interviewees that I had a couple days ago, and the great thing about sports and athletics and pushing ourselves, and I'm preaching to the choir to you, is I almost think, given this whole COVID-19 scenario, it's almost like we that have been involved with sports where we really had to, push and kind of, suck it up or whatever you want to call it. It's almost like we have a suit of armor on from the standpoint of being able to adapt to these challenging times that we've had these last 10 months. And not that I don't want this to end, we all do want it to end, right. But I just look at some of the advantages that we have as far as sports and athletics, and having that kind of background in my mind really became helpful in these the past 2020. And I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that perspective.
Tim, there's no question about that. And I think as you look at things, the fact that, I at one time was an athlete. That was a while back, I admit. But, as a former athlete, but as somebody that has basically kind of poured their life around sports, if you will, you kind of get used to the setbacks because you don't win every game. If you're a baseball player, you don't go 4 for 4 every game. And the little lessons that you get in sports, I think, can help to prepare you for things like this COVID that we've all had to deal with. It certainly helped me in my cancer battle. There's a lot of things that really, athletics, there's a lot of lessons that you get that have nothing to do with what goes on between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
It's always in how you approach it. And you know, I admit, yeah, I was always probably too competitive a person back in the old days when I played. But you know, I think you learn, and you know, it's how you deal with disappointment. And let's face it, few things in the last length of time have been more disappointing than the way this COVID is shaking out for us.
Sure. No, totally agree, Steve. What are some of the some of your thoughts or advice toward some of our student athletes now, these teens, early 20s individuals? If looking back on your sports career and your work career, work ethic, and again, I try to emphasize for everybody that I'm talking to is that if you want to become the hunted out there in the job market, I kind of talk about three things. In other words, have a work ethic, develop those people skills, and be willing to go above and beyond. In other words, go in the extra mile. And if you do those three things, you will come to the attention of people that can, help, move and help, promote you up the ladder of whatever you're involved with. So what would be some of your advice toward young people, teens, early 20s? It doesn't have to be anybody that's been in sports. I'm a big believer in, and you and I talked about this before, in the extracurricular things. We had our radio interview a couple weeks ago, sports, band, music, the plays, that type of thing. So what would be some of your advice and ideas that you could share with, young people like this?
I think it starts with a basic, and that is you can't necessarily worry about what you can't control. And I understand the tendencies, and I think as athletes, we want to control everything. But, I think the same would apply to a concert pianist or a talented violinist, because, you control what you're doing, but you can't control the other things. But, you always want to. And I think trying not to worry about that, but putting yourself in the best position. And when you mention the job market, for those that are going to be out there, not getting the call back is necessarily something they can't control, but there's probably little things they can do to keep their names fresh, if you will, dropping notes. I mean, my goodness, I wish we had email back when you and I were young. What an easy way to do things. But, that's just one example. But drop a card, drop a thank you note. There's so many things that can just find those couple of things that help you to stand out. And I mean that whether you're talking competitive sports or a competitive job market, which, let's face it, it is. And I think everything's got to be in perspective. I'm a little bit of a believer in sometimes some things are meant to be, sometimes they're not meant to be. Find that middle ground to where you want to be. It's very, very difficult for people to change who they are. Mm-hmm. And to a degree, maybe we need to embrace it more, but with the right perspective to say, well, this is who I am, but this is why I can help you. And by that, I'm definitely referring to the job market, no question about it.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's interesting. Just the other day, I had a real good interview with 𝙎𝙊𝘾𝙄𝘼. He was a 2016 graduate there at Northeastern. He's on the baseball team, and a great young man. And he is just, he graduated a semester early at Kutztown. And he made a great point the other day when he was saying about, who you hang with, who you spend your time with, and that type of thing. And he's made it a point that because he is a hustler and a go-getter and he wants a lot out of his life, he brought up a great point about the idea that he does not, he does not want to spend any time with people that are lazy. He wants to be with people that are movers and shakers. And I thought that was such a great point because, as you know, and I know, that the amount of time that people of all ages, not just the young, are spending on their screen time, gaming and social media. There's ways you can actually measure and manage that scenario, because again, the old saying is, you want to make entertainment life's dessert, not the main course. And unfortunately, a lot of this is getting flipped on its head.
Yeah.
And I'm just seeing a lot of enforced laziness by a lot of people spending inordinate amount of time on these devices when, you know, they should be, you know, looking to try to, you know, get ahead as far as their life is concerned.
Yeah, and I think it even goes a little bit further, and that is if you're somebody that is really in tune to your device, and you're absolutely right, well then maybe my suggestion there, I don't know if you're looking for a suggestion, but one of the ways I look at this is, well then use that device to learn something.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
we
totally.
are, you know, we're never ever too old to learn things. And in listening even to a couple of your interviews, you know, via the YouTube channel, I'll tell you what, Tim, you know, I picked up a couple things, and I'm picking up things from people in their early 20s. That's a long time ago for me. So, you know, the benefits are there. Never stop learning. I mean, you can, you know, you're going to have your time, but boy, if you spend 2 hours a day on your phone, just imagine if 15 minutes of that was spent doing something you can learn.
Absolutely.
I think that to me would be such a benefit to anybody.
Yeah, yeah, makes a lot of sense, Steve. That's for sure. Any other last word things that you have as far as some thoughts for these young up and comers before we conclude here?
Yeah, and you know what? I go back to the late great 𝙎𝙊𝘾𝙄𝘼, who gave the most incredible speech ever. It's one I think about every day of my life. It's easy for me to do that as a survivor, to think of Jim's words. But you know what? They apply in more than just you know, living. You know, make the most of every day. And Jim's bottom line was, don't give up, don't ever give up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's more prophetic words that I know of than those. It's so simple, but yet, you know, and I'm as guilty as anybody. You can fall into the trap of saying, oh, woe is me. But man, if you can avoid that, you will be shocked at how much you can accomplish just simply by not giving up.
Right, right. And well, and again, we all go by these sayings and everything. And that, I think it was Einstein that said it, that, or no, I'm sorry, Edison, I think, said that he says if he had a choice of a person who was very persistent versus somebody who was intelligent, he would take persistence every time. And I think what you just said is the key then is to persist, but persist intelligently. You know, that you've heard the saying, first you don't succeed, try again. But I like to add in there, if at first you don't succeed, try again with experimentation.
Yeah.
You know, there's other doors and windows out there for you to get through as you're going through life. And, you know, banging your head on the same strategy probably doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense.
Now, that's a good point. And, you know, the one sports metaphor that I go back to, sports adage, if you will, is, you know, lesser talent that works hard will beat a lot of talent that doesn't work.
Right.
However that expression goes, I
Right.
butchered it for you, but I'm a firm believer in that. Listen, in my writing career, there was people that could spin words a whole lot better than I ever could. But I'd like to think I did it with a passion that maybe some do, maybe some don't. But you know, we have the ability to wake up every day with a new day, and
Right.
might as well
Right.
make the most of it and do it with passion.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know if I shared it with you before, but you made me think about this, what you just said there. And Phil Myers, who runs the Wisehaven Tennis Center, had a great saying on that, pretty much the same way you were just talking about. And he says, hard work will beat talent when talent doesn't work hard. And it was pretty much what you were just saying.
That's exactly what I just butchered it. So, I mean, that expression is spot on. And I think that applies in life, not just on the tennis court, the basketball court, the swimming pool, you know, so many. Does natural talent help? Sure, it can. But
Yeah.
you quit working, it doesn't matter.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, you go back to the Michael Jordan, and who was obviously very talented.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, talent really bloomed, you know, once he hit college and everything. But the thing is that, you know, one of his sayings was, you know, I have to improve and get better every day. Now, here's a guy who was as good of an athlete as probably the NBA ever saw, and yet his work ethic. And the same thing they said about Charles Barkley. Barkley credits Moses Malone for helping him develop more of a work ethic. Because Charles, as you recall, down there in Auburn, was referred as the round mound of rebound or something to that effect, and that was his nickname.
Yeah.
And he was encouraged to get into better shape and basically hit a lot more of their God-given abilities. And obviously, if you're on that high of a level in the major leagues, you better not only have talent, you better be out working, because there's going to be somebody coming up to take your spot if you don't.
Absolutely, no question about that. It's not always the brightest, not always the strongest, not always the best. Work comes into play, no question about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, Steve, any concluding thoughts before we wrap up here?
I just want to say that the work you're doing, I mean, it's a great thing. There's so many messages to get out, and the willingness to take a chance and say, look, we're putting this out there for you. You know what? I look at it that talking to you and doing this, if somebody benefits from it, great. But I benefit from it even more by wanting to do it, by wanting to not only share a story, but I think more reminds me every day of why I do what I do.
Right. Well, fantastic. Well, Steve, if people want to get a hold of you, could you give us your best contact information, please?
Yeah, it's real easy. You can email me. I'm going to give a new email address that I created for a new website, and that is steve@stevenavaroli.com. Just keeping it all to the name. They can reach me at that. And certainly, I don't mind my number via text or call 717-817-3432. And always glad to share some advice in that. You can follow me on Twitter @Steve Navaroli as well. So
that's fantastic, Steve. Just for the sake of, I know how to spell your last name. You know how to spell your last name, but please spell it for people that may be you here for early on.
Absolutely. It is Navaroli. So, and then you just run Steve Navaroli together. Just go on stevenavaroli.com and click the email tag. You can find me that way as well.
Great. Fantastic, Steve. Well, thank you so much. Do appreciate your time today. And we will definitely stay in touch here. Okay.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Steve.